Good morning. Can you hear me? Okay. I'm always nervous when I have to preach in front of my favorite pastor. By the way, I'll give you that $5 I promised you for saying nice things about me. Ay, 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 ay. I don't know why I am a minister. I just fool around too much. You know? I just fool around too much. The other thing I'm a little bit disappointed about is children. I like telling children's stories as much as I like preaching. What's that? Go for it? You're just going to have to wait until you have kids. Yeah. You can make them, can't you? Yeah, been there, done that. See, I fool around too much. My sermon today, I'd like to start out by saying, sooner or later. Okay, I'm done. That's the title of my sermon, sooner or later, but that, I think, is kind of the problem we see in this world today, that people are looking forward, sooner or later, to a resolve or to a rescue, all right? And so I'd like to tell you two personal stories that I have of an experience as a hospital chaplain. And these two stories I'd like to put in juxtaposition to each other. I was working with the Littleton Seventh-day Adventist Hospital in Littleton, Colorado, and as my duties, sometimes I was assigned to the intensive care ward. And this one time when I was assigned there, I had an urgent call from the ward saying that there was a patient dying, and would I please come up and be with the family. And you know, you're always a little nervous when you get a call like that. How can I help? Will people want me there? You know, am I intruding, or will I be a blessing? And on this particular occasion, I went to the door, I prayed a silent prayer for Lord's help, and then I knocked on the door, and I opened up the door and introduced myself as Chaplain Ellison. And these two ladies said, "Oh, we're so glad you're here. Come on in and rejoice with us. We're celebrating our mother's life." And it was their mother that was laying on the bed, you know, with the monitor going like this, you know. And she was out of it. But I went in there, and these two ladies were so confident that their mom would be in heaven, you know. And it was just a wonderful, rich experience. And I asked them, I said, "Tell me about your mom," right? And that's one of my things as a chaplain. If I can get them to talk about the person that's dying or dead, then they can kind of rejoice in their life, right? And they started telling me about their mom in their church. And their mom made hats. And she made hats for practically every woman in the church. Now, if you know anything about black churches, the women like to wear hats. and so you know, when the women in the church found out that she was dying, they planned that the very next weekend, I think they were Sunday keepers, the very next weekend after she died, that every woman in that church would wear one of her hats as a tribute to her. And that at the funeral and the graveside, they would all be wearing her hats because they loved her. That's a wonderful tribute. You know, a wonderful tribute to a lady who gave herself to others in the church, and they recognized that she was more than a hat maker. She was a wonderful Christian woman. She had hope in the resurrection of Jesus Christ, and those daughters were confident because of her life that they were not losing their mother forever, that they were just losing her for a short period of time until Jesus comes. And beautiful experience, beautiful. And I walked out of there higher than I walked in, thanking the Lord for that experience. The same ward, not the same day, I had another call to go in and be with a patient's family as the patient was dying. In this case, the patient was also comatose, and so she couldn't talk. But I knocked on the door, same as before, same procedure, a little prayer beforehand, stuck my head in the door, introduced myself as Chaplain Ellison, and a son bid me to come in, and he says, "We don't need your skills. We're atheists." And I said, okay, I understand. You know, not everybody needs a minister at this time, but tell me about your mom. And that was my way of getting in and maybe working with the grief process a little bit. And I'm still being a chaplain, but not to their understanding as a chaplain, as a minister in their minds. And they started telling me about their mom and how she had talked to them before she lost consciousness. She had asked everyone in the room, she says, "Which one of you here is not going to die?" No, you're all going to die. We are all going to die, and that's the end of life. There's nothing after that. We need to come to grips with that. So she was preaching to her family. Nothing after that. She says, the only thing that we can do is make this world a better place while we walk on it. Okay, that's noble. That's nice. You know, we have to make a difference before we die. And so that was her gift to her family after she was gone. No hope in the resurrection, right? Compare those two. That's kind of a simple diagram of what the world is in right now. Hope or no hope, right? Hope or no hope. But I would like to say that maybe it's two different kinds of hope. All right? Hope for the resurrection and eternal life, or hope in making a difference for humanity. So two different kinds of hope, but still hope, right? All right, we can buy that. We have a world today that is struggling with all kinds of things that are going on. And we have some issues that are bothering people. All you have to do is watch the news. Aren't you disturbed by the news? I am grossly disturbed by the news that's out there. One murder after another, you know, crime, right? But then there's just some rather catastrophic things going on that needs a savior. This earth is fading away like an old garment, if you want to quote Isaiah, right? And who is going to come galloping to the rescue? Sorry, I'm from the West. We're used to horses out there, okay? But who's going to come galloping to the rescue? Well, he comes on a white horse. Yeah, Revelation 19. Yeah, he comes galloping to the rescue. But science comes galloping in on an evolved horse to the rescue. They want to save this planet. A little bit of an echo there. They want to save this planet, right? They want to make a difference, and they've been crying, we need to fix this thing now, right? So they're talking about all the things that we need to fix. Global warming, famine, pestilence, you know, just all this stuff that's going on in this world. We need to stop the temperature going up, and we need to stop the results that are going from the temperature rising and onward, it's just really quite a big task. And they've been preaching this for a while, and a lot of people have not been listening. Some people even call it a hoax, right? We've heard that, haven't we? It can't be true, it's a hoax. But we're seeing just some stuff that Jesus predicted. Famines and earthquakes, wars and rumors of wars, pestilence, all of these things we're seeing on a crescendo, if you will, a crescendo of problems that just keep piling up everywhere. Fires, forest fires everywhere, earthquakes, volcanoes erupting, right? And it's just getting worse and worse, and they're crying for, the scientists are crying for the governments to get on board. And some governments are starting to wake up and some are not. But they need a leader to try and get them together. So guess who got on board and wants to be that leader? What? The Pope. Boy, you're the smartest person in this room. That's right, the Pope. Back in 2015, the Pope wrote an encyclical called Laudato Si. And in there, he goes on and on and on about how important it is for us to get together as governments and so forth and appoint a leader who can marshal all these various entities together to solve the problem of global warming, to solve the problem of racism, to solve the problem of poverty and hunger and food scarcity and so forth. And he's calling for the world to get behind someone. Who? The Pope. Behind him to solve these world problems. Let me read you some quotes here that are interesting. The Pope said in Laudato Si, "It is like a choir. We have to sing together. And right now, unity means saving Mother Earth, saving biodiversity, all together, all together, all together." Let's get together. Let's save Mother Earth. That's pretty significant. Wouldn't that be noble? It is a noble cause, right? To stop hunger, or at least feed people that are hungry, right? To try and bring about a way of growing food in places that can't grow food right now. That's a noble thing. I can remember way back in the Dark Ages when we were writing on tablets of stone, when I was in the Denver South Seventh-day Adventist Church. Don't laugh at that joke. That's a bad joke. When I was in Seventh-day Adventist Church in Denver South Church, and I wasn't an Adventist yet. I was studying, and I was getting ready to go to Andrews University to study more about this Adventist church. And if it didn't work out joining that church, at least I'd be somewhat prepared to be a minister, if they'd let me. But I was in the youth chapel, and we were studying a Sabbath school lesson, and some young man stood up and started going on and on and on about saving this planet and fixing the problems with this Earth's biosphere, right? And I stupidly raised my hand and I said, if Jesus is coming right away, what does it matter? You know, I mean, he's going to fix the earth, make the earth made new, you know, go back to Eden and so forth. Well, why do we need to get involved in this thing? Let's go out and win souls and so forth. And you know what that kid said in my response? He said, "Do you take care of your personal hygiene? Sounds like you don't." That was an insult. And I wasn't even an Adventist. He could have kicked me right out of the church with that. praise God that he still had me determined to find out more about the Adventist church, right? But, that was an insult. But he was right and I was right. We do need to take care of this planet. We don't need to waste water. We don't need to, use up everything, throw carbon into the air in tons and tons and tons. So it's a noble thing. And so maybe we need to give one little tiny tap on the back of the Pope and say, you're doing a good thing. But let's read on, okay? Here's another quote from the Pope. I heard this just last week. He said, the biblical story of creation is a myth. Yeah, you got that fast, didn't you? That is gaspable, right? And she gasped right there, but can you believe he said that? It was a video that I saw, and he was speaking in Spanish, but they had the translation written on the bottom of the screen, and the biblical story of creation is a myth. And then another thing that he said, today you could never practice theology without a dialogue with science. What's he doing? What's he doing? He's trying to get everybody on board. He's trying to get scientists and politicians, and governments, and different faith groups on board to fight this climate crisis. And I think he's trying to get the evolutionists on board too by making that comment about the creation story in the Bible being a myth. Whew. There's a limit to how far I will go to try and get somebody to come to church. I'm not going to lie. I remember one church, there was a very promising young man, well-to-do, and had a nice house, who was single, and he attended one of our meetings, and he talked to a deaconess in our church, and he said, I'm wondering if I should come to your church. Do you have any singles girls in the church that I might be able to date? And the deaconess said, oh, we got loads of them. In that church, we only had one single female, and she was just freshly divorced. Is that a load? No, I think she was pretty trim, but it wasn't loads of them. And she had gone too far, I think, in trying to get somebody to church. You don't lie to get people in church. You tell the truth, right? Oh, man. But anyway, he's trying to get everybody on board. And that's what's happening in this world. And they're trying to solve the climate crisis. And there's a number of issues that are going on. This I found in the Guardian magazine. Our hopes, dreams, plans, and expectations can't survive without a livable, habitable planet. From the perspective of that second group of people that I went and visited in the hospital, that, the only thing we can do is make a difference while we are alive. Their hope is to make this planet livable for years to come for the offspring and ancestors, right? And so that's what the Guardian magazine is saying, that we need to have a habitable planet so that we can have our hopes and dreams come true. Now, what are they up against? They're up against multitude of different issues. Take, for instance, the Earth. The Earth is a biosystem. In the ground, there's all kinds of little organisms that exist in the Earth. And we plant plants and crops in the Earth, and those biosystems and those nutrients and so forth are in there, and they come up and make crops and make us food. 95% of our food comes from the Earth. in some way, fashion, or another, right? And so we have to treat the earth properly. And I took soils class when I was in college the first couple of years there. I was training to be a forest ranger, and so I had to take some science classes on earth. And I took a class in soils. Soils, something you have to learn about rotation of crops and so forth. You know, the professor I had for that soils class was the dirtiest-minded professor in the whole school. I'm going to wait for some of you to get that. But I learned that you have to rotate crops, or you have to leave the ground fallow for a while so it can build back up those organisms, right? And if we mistreat the earth and so forth, and just keep, you know, putting crops in, crops, and then we fertilize it with artificial fertilizers, you know, ammonia and potassium and all that kind of stuff, after a while the ground just gets absolutely untenable. Can't grow anything in that ground, and we have to move on to another place, right? And so we ruin the ground. We treat it like dirt. It's terrible the way we treat the earth. And that's what's happening in this world. Not only deforestation and overplanting, we're doing all kinds of things there. And science is trying to find ways to grow plants without ground, without dirt, and so forth. And they need hydroponics. So they're thinking of doing hydroponics. And in Holland, they're trying to figure out how to grow crops in salt water and so forth, because we have a lot of salt water, but not a lot of fresh water. And so the earth is one thing that's got to be saved, right? And then after the earth, we have oceans. Oceans are being destroyed. And oceans provide a huge portion of our oxygen. Did you know that? We talk about trees, and trees do that, but oxygens, well, the oceans cover more of the earth than the forests do. We're losing forests, but the ocean still produces oxygen by the transfer of carbon dioxide and the amoeba and the plankton and so forth. They all do this, and it's wonderful. But the oceans are being ruined. They're being overfished, and that reduces the balance of nature in the oceans. You've heard recently the business of they can't fish for snow crabs in Alaska anymore. Not at least this season. You've heard of that? You know, they're overfishing, acidification, pollution, and carbon dioxide, over amounts of carbon dioxide. Let's see, I've got all these things listed. So the oceans are being destroyed and ruined, and the balance. And with global warming and the temperatures going up, you notice that, well, I don't know if you noticed, but I did when I was learning about coral reefs. Coral reefs grow at a certain temperature at a certain level in the ocean. Just so far down is where they thrive at a certain temperature. If the oceans rise, then the coral has to grow up to that new level. But if the temperature rises, they can't grow. They have to go somewhere where the temperature is better, and they die. And you know, all these coral reefs, the Great Coral Reef in Australia is 2/3 gone, you know, and they're trying to save what's left. And the coral reefs are places where lots of food for the fish population and so forth, the plankton and everything else, exists. And so you're losing a nursery when you lose coral reef. That's just one thing that's happening in the oceans. And it's destroying, and the oceans are becoming dead. Dead like the blood of a dead man, although they haven't turned red yet. That's going to happen in the future. We know that. All right? And then we have forests, wetlands, savannas, rivers, and the cryosphere. Those things are all being destroyed. We're losing our forests faster than we can replant them, right? Those forests provide us a oxygen, but they also provide other things, protection for animal populations, and the animal populations have to exist so the balance of nature is there. It goes on and on and on. Each one of these things is a ripple that goes out, and nature has to kind of accommodate that, and pretty soon it's just all going to fail, right? And what we have is a situation where we can't keep going. Oh, cryosphere. I wanted to talk about that. Cryosphere. You know what that is? All the snow and ice that's on the planet. We have huge ice sheets in the North Pole and the South Pole. North Pole on Greenland, and then we have glaciers, and we have snow-capped mountains and snow in the winter, and so forth. The cryosphere is melting. We're losing glaciers, we're losing snow-capped mountains, and sometimes only just a little tiny bit of snow cap on the mountains now. And then we have the ice sheets in Antarctica. And, well, take for instance, the ice sheet in Greenland. If the whole Greenland ice sheet melts, and it's doing that right now, it's going faster than they thought a couple years ago. If the entire ice sheet in Greenland alone melts, it will raise the oceans 8 inches. 8 inches. Wow, that's significant, especially when you have 8-inch higher ocean and you have high tide. Then you have places that are right on the coastline that are going to be affected. But if you look at the ice sheet in Antarctica, did you know that over 80% of the fresh water in this world is in that ice sheet in Antarctica, frozen? Now, when it melts, we don't get fresh water. It flows into the ocean and becomes salt water, right? But if that ice sheet should suddenly melt, it won't suddenly do that, but it is speeding up, and it's getting faster and faster, and they're talking about it breaking off. It will raise the sea levels by about 10 feet, 3 meters. What will Philadelphia look like when the oceans raise 10 feet? Well, going to have to get some gondolas, right, to get around, Not everything's going to be underwater, but a number of places will be underwater. Some of those parks down by the river, the only thing that's going to survive is the battleship New Jersey. It's just going to go up, But, 10 feet, 3 meters, wow, that's a lot. There's another problem too. As the ice sheets are melting, they decrease something called albedo. Ever heard of that word, albedo? Albedo is the reflective quality of the earth. When the sun shines on the earth, it reflects, it bounces back when it hits white, when it hits glaciers and snow, right? It bounces back and the heat goes up rather than staying down here. When the ice sheet melts, the sun comes down and hits the ocean, warms up the ocean, warms up the land, causes deserts to be more higher heat and so forth, and it just goes on and on. Albedo is being decreased. So as you have the ice sheets melt, little bit by little bit, the temperature warming of the planet goes faster and faster and faster because there's less reflection, albedo. Okay? Wow. So it's going to go faster and faster, whereas scientists are sometimes saying, well, it's going this way, this way, this way, so by the time we get to 2035, it will be, so hot and so forth. Well, they have to understand it's a crescendo, and it goes up faster and faster. That's the oceans for you, folks, right? And that's the cryosphere. The cryosphere warms up the oceans, and the oceans give us more atmosphere. There's another issue. Now, you've heard of ozone, right? Ozone up there is good, right? Up there in the stratosphere, it's good. And we worried about the ozone layer 30, 40 years ago, We were really worried about it. Fluorocarbons, we stopped all those because we didn't want holes in the ozone layer. Ozone layer up there is good, but ozone down here in the troposphere is bad. Have you heard of that? We use 4 little words to describe it down here. Smog. Smog is another word for ozone down here in the troposphere. And smog is bad. The more we have of covering, around the troposphere in this earth, the more our plants cannot come to full fruition. One of the plant products that is most affected by this is rice. Do you realize how many people in this world live off of rice every meal? And for every percentage that goes up there, we have less and less rice that can be produced. And that's not just rice, but it's wheat and other products that have to grow, and they can't grow and they can't reach fruition, when there's that ozone layer down here low, blocking the ability of the sun to give its richness. So scientists are struggling and struggling and struggling, but you know what? I'm giving science a bad name, right? Giving science a bad name. Because science have done a lot of good things, haven't they? We can thank science for a lot of achievements. Microphones, right? Communication. Wow. I can remember when cell phones came out and I said, I'm not going to get a cell phone unless they have computer stuff and internet and GPS and all that. I was trying to avoid buying a cell phone because I figured it would be a leash that people can get in contact with me anywhere I go. Well, so now they have GPS and internet and news and everything else on these things. And I couldn't avoid getting a cell phone. And now people can get me wherever I am, and I don't like that. I want to be elusive. That's just me. Science has done an awful lot of wonderful things for us. Refrigeration, so that we can ship food from all over the world, and to all the world. And, medicine, just science has done. Let me give you an example of something that they're doing. Venice is in trouble with the water raising. They're right on sea level, right? I've been there when the water is on the walking paving stones next to the hotel that I was the Carlton Hotel, right across from the train station. Water was that deep when I walked across the paving stone. They're in a problem, so science came up with the idea of building dams out in the ocean, levees that they could open up and close and so forth. When it's high tide, they can close them. When it's low tide, they can leave them open so the ships can come in and out and so forth. The cruise ships are very important. And they did that. Science did a wonderful job of doing that. The only problem is they had a storm and a high tide, and when they closed everything down, guess what happened? Venice is built on mud, and they take trees, poles, and drive them into the mud, and that makes the mud stronger, and then they can build their city on the mud, okay? And it's solid. But when you block the ocean from coming in out there, and it gets higher and higher, it puts pressure down below, and the water seeps in through the mud and starts shooting up, and they had huge floods in the city, even with the dam. What are they going to do now? Well, they've come up with an idea, and you're not going to believe this one. They're going to drill down below the mud and into the underlying ground, the rock and so forth, and they're going to pump water down below that and raise Venice, the whole city. They're going to raise the whole city 25 centimeters. Wow! That's great. And that's what they're going to do now. Science to the rescue. Giddy up. Yee-haw! They're doing that. And now we have to look at something else too, and I'm running over time, I guess. We have to look at something else too, and that is the fact that this earth is not going to last. So science has to come to the rescue of future humanity. We're trying to solve these global or earth or planet problems here now so that people can survive until science can come up with a way for us to get off this planet. You know what? That's one time where science and Christianity comes together and agrees. We need to get off this planet, right? We need to get off this planet. We need to get out of here. We Christians, we want to go the safe way. And the scientists are trying to figure out ways to get us off this planet. They're searching for habitable planets out there in space, right? They searched Alpha Centauri, the nearest star to our star, and they tried to find an exoplanet or a planet that's habitable, that's circling Alpha Centauri. No. There's no habitable planet next to Alpha Centauri. So we're going to have to go a little bit further. Alpha Centauri is 4.2 light years away. Okay? So it's out there. And it's a distance away. If you travel at the speed of light, it's going to take you a little over 4 years to get there. All right? If you travel at the speed of light. Right now, we have science has come up with a way to travel as fast as a quarter of the speed of light. It's called Starshot, and it uses a very unique system of propulsion, but it can go a quarter of the speed of light. That means it would take us 22 years to get, 23 years to get to Alpha Centauri in a spaceship of some sort. But while they're trying to find a place for us to go, they're trying to find a way for us to go there, right? And so they're saying, well, let's go to Mars and populate Mars, and that will teach us all the things that we need to know before we can travel out further. Why are they doing this? Because this earth is going to perish. That's right, this earth is going to perish. We have a yellow dwarf as our sun. It's going to grow bigger and bigger and bigger, and they estimate that in millions of years from now, it's going to be so big that it will encompass Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars. So we're going to get burned up by our own sun. So we have to get off this planet, right? We have to get off this planet. And so the idea is we need to populate Mars, but we've got a number of problems, and so they say, well, let's make it a little bit easier for ourselves. Let's go populate the moon. Have you heard of the Artemis project? That rocket that they tried to send up last couple months? It's now scheduled for November, right? That is the first step in this process of first getting to the moon, establishing a colony, and then getting to Mars, establishing a colony, and then being able to travel fast enough to get out beyond that. They have a problem. It's called cosmic rays. Now the sun puts out solar rays, and those solar rays are like BB guns, BBs. And then there's galactic rays that come from our galaxy. Those are like rifle shots, right? And then there's something called cosmic rays that come from outside of our galaxy, and those are like hypersonic missiles, all right? Now, when we went to the moon and we were walking on the moon, our astronauts got bombarded with solar rays, and they go right through you. And one of our astronauts had it go through his helmet and his brain, and it affected his vision for a split second. And he says, what was that? Right? Now, what's interesting about these astronauts when they get out there in space is that they are affected in, some very negative ways, okay? And these negative ways, where have I put my notes here? Negative ways of They are 4 to 5 times, astronauts who have been out in space, they are 4 to 5 times more susceptible to heart disease than the general population. Why is that? Because they've been in outer space. And they lose 2% of their bone density for every month they spend in space. Now, we're going to send some of us to Mars. That takes 4 months to get there. We're going to lose a lot of bone density, and we're going to have a lot of heart disease and so forth. Can you imagine what it's going to be like if we find a way to build a spaceship that can avoid the cosmic rays, the galactic rays, and all that from shooting through our spaceship? If we find a way to get there and we have to travel, like, let's say, 60 years to a planet as fast as we can possibly go, can you imagine a bunch of people in one little tiny space surviving for 50 years in that way? I mean, sometimes we can't even get them in one cab and they start arguing, right? They'll all be dead by the time they get there. They'll all be killed, right? They'll wipe each other out because humans haven't found a way to live peacefully with each other. It's awful. It's awful. Back in 2005, President Obama made a comment. He says, we have yet to eliminate the baser qualities of humankind. In other words, science is supposed to fix the human nature, get rid of sin, right? You know, one way to get rid of sin is take away the 10 Commandments. So we have all these problems. And we also have not only the sun destroying this earth, but we have an asteroid that might destroy this earth. They say it will happen within the next 100 years. And they have the Big Rip and the Big Crunch. Real quick, Big Rip and Big Crunch. You know what the Big Rip is? It's when the universe is expanding, and when it expands, the molecules will fly apart and we'll all just rip apart. That's one theory. Well, how is that going to work if we go to another planet? And the Big Crunch is that we're all coming back together again, and we'll all just get conglomerated into a big, huge ball, right? And maybe have another Big Bang. I don't know. But that's what science is trying to do. They're trying to solve an awful problem. And I would call it an awful hope, wouldn't you? It's an awful hope. And what do we as Adventists have? We have the blessed hope. We have the blessed hope. Science gallops in on its horse and wants to be the savior of humanity. And by the way, if they can't get humanity to survive in a long trip, guess what their other option is? You're not going to believe this. You're not going to believe this. They want to send microorganisms to another planet that's habitable and let evolution take its case and build humanity again. It's called panspermia. That's what it's called. And they're researching microorganisms to see which one might survive. They're looking for organisms that are able to survive, and they found one that they think they might be able to send to space called a tardigrade. It can live in very harsh environments, and it might be able to make more humans out there in space. Folks, I like our solution. I like our blessed hope. I like our Savior. I like the way our Savior is coming to our rescue, right? Oh man, I love the way God has laid this out. When we have belief in God and in the Bible story, the creation story, we know that He can recreate, right? And I can't wait to get off this planet because I have a blessed hope. And you know what? I can't wait for something else. Now, I don't know if you're like me, but somebody found out that I'm old. And so about 2 or 3 times a week, I get some kind of advertisement in my mailbox telling me about a retirement area where I can go live. You get them too? Yeah? You get them too? You're not that old. You want to bet? No, it's just, oh man, I get tired of getting those things. And you know what I do with them? But there's one that I want to go to. called Christ Home. Have you got one of those advertisements? It's called Christ Home. Oh, I don't mean this one. I want to go to Christ Home. My retirement is out of this world, right? Mine is out of this world. Christ Home is where I want to go. And He's building me a home. Man, oh man, that is wonderful hope, right? Now, I have preached too long, and we have a song that you guys don't know. So how about if you sing, We're Marching to Zion? Can you do that one? Because the one I picked, I found out that you guys aren't familiar with it. Can you sing Marching to Zion? I am going to march out this door and get in my car and go to Lansdale. Can I have you pray the final prayer, Pastor? All right. So he'll pray the final prayer, and you guys are singing Marching to Zion because you know it. All right. And God bless each one of you.